Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark was directed by Andre Orvidal, who directed Troll Hunter and The Autopsy of Jane Doe. Produced by, among others, Guillermo del Toro, one of my favorite producers, directors. I love his visual style. And it's based on a popular series of, short, scary stories, 3 books in particular, written by Alvin Schwartz, with some great, terrific, and terrifying artwork. I mean, if you've seen any of that stuff, the artwork was absolutely incredible. If you've read any of the books, and if any of them stuck with you, you may actually enjoy this movie quite a bit. And I'm a big fan of the books. I haven't read them in a number of years, but I loved them as a kid. I loved them as a teenager. I loved them in my 20s. I mean, I'm 38 right now, so I haven't read them in a number of years, but I always loved them and I always thought they were great. Now, there were some stories, if you're unfamiliar with it, the stories, it was like a collection of stories that some range from about this long, some were a page or two, some were about 10 pages. There were some that went on a little bit long and weren't as scary. There were some that were humorous. There were some that were psychologically scary. There were some that were downright goddamn terrifying. Even as a kid or even as an adult, you could find some of these terrifying. Now, some were hit and miss, as you're going to get with any scary story, anthology, series, whatever you want to call it. And sure, some of the stories in the later installments, the second and third installments, were also hit and miss, but by and large, the artwork was like 95% of the time, I'd say almost 100% of the time, fucking terrifying. It was great stuff. It was very, gothic, but very well done and everything. And I loved how the characters were drawn. I really enjoyed that stuff. So I was very, very excited to see this movie. And I figure with, the visual style, the way Del Toro could add a lot of atmosphere to a lot of movies that he's been a part of, whether he directed or produced them. And Andre, I enjoyed what he did with Troll Hunter. If you're not familiar with that, it's a found footage movie, so to speak, where trolls are real and this one guy hunts them. Not a very creative title, but it actually was pretty good for what it was. And Autopsy of Jane Doe, I like the atmosphere. I like how well done it was. I didn't care for it as much as other people, but I did like how he could make it kind of claustrophobic and everything and kind of in one location and actually make it, maybe a little bit chilling and maybe a little bit on the simple side, but it was still pretty good for what it was. So I was very excited to see what they could do, and being such a fan of the books, really, really stoked. There were some drawbacks. I'm going to get into some of the stuff here a little bit later. I will get into spoilers at some point. I will be waving my hand. I also put a spoiler warning in the description, so please make sure to reference that. But probably happen a couple minutes from now. There are 4 friends that are out having a fun Halloween night. Stella, Augie, Ramon, and Chucky, or Chuck. I mean, you're not Chucky the doll, but they're out, and Augie is, a variation of August. This comes back to play a little bit later. They're all having fun and everything. Ramon kind of becomes, I don't want to say a reluctant participant, but he comes a little bit later. So there's 3 friends. They're out having some fun and everything, Halloween night. And then something goes south. They do a prank that kind of goes a little bit wrong, and they end up, befriending Ramon soon afterwards. And there's some other underlying story stuff that I'll get into here a little bit later. But they end up, going out and having fun on Halloween night. They're like, oh, well, hey, we got out of this hairy situation. Let's go and just have some fun. Hey, Estella says, hey, you want to see the haunted house? I don't really remember, I don't really recall seeing too many of the actors in other movies, though the character Ramon, the actor, he played Eddie in the Hunger Games. I do remember that. I knew I recognized him from something. So they go to this house, and this house was owned by the Bellows family. And there's a legend about the woman Sarah Bellows, who apparently poisoned children and died. And she was, she has haunted that house and told stories to children through the wall and everything, would tell scary stories. And of course, if you've seen any of the trailer, if you can figure out that I'm telling you something that's based on an anthology of scary story, of scary stories and everything, if I'm telling you about books, gee, I wonder what it's actually about. Stella and her friends, they're searching through this house and everything. There's some good atmosphere and stuff like that, and they find the book. Well, Stella does. And she's like, well, wait, tell me a story. Because that's a great thing that you do when you go to a haunted house. You find a goddamn book and you say, tell me a story. Well, as things go on, these stories come to life. And the characters that are in the movie factor into the book, and then they die in these ways. Sarah is basically controlling the book and writing the stories as they go on, and getting revenge basically for a death, or for, her death, which may have not been, she may have not actually done the shit that people say that she did. Did she? We'll find out later. Well, if you've seen the movie, then you probably already know, and you're wondering my opinions on. But these scary stories, there are other ones that are referenced in the book. And among them, I mean, I didn't quite catch all of them. One was the Wendigo, and I do remember that one. There was the Big Toe, which is a pretty creepy one. There's the Dream. I really enjoyed that one. Mitai Doti Walker, the Red Spot, and Harold. And Harold's the Scarecrow. And if you, if you remember anything about the scary story, the scary story books, Harold was a character that stuck out quite a bit. With this, the fact that it was PG-13, I think it didn't hurt it as much as I thought. I would have liked maybe it to be rated R, but also at the same time for the target audience, particularly since kids and teens, gravitated towards those books, especially when they first happened. I mean, the first one, I believe, was published the year I was born. Again, I loved them even into my 20s. With these, it did pay homage to these pretty well. Now, with a $28 million budget, I was a little bit curious how they were going to, capture, were they going to capture the likeness of the various creatures, of the various monsters, of the various anything? Were they going to capture the atmosphere well? So they didn't really have much of a big name cast, so most of the budget tended to go to the, the atmosphere and the monsters and everything, and the characters from these books. Harold was very well done, I will say that. The character from The Dream was very well done. The whole stuff with the Red Spot, that was pretty damn cool. But overall, my main issue is the characters are so goddamn one-dimensional. And it wasn't that the acting was bad. Actually, if anything, the acting from the young people, particularly the actress who played Stella, I thought was fine. There was this one stupid line in the entire goddamn movie where she says, later after some tragedy and stuff like that happened and some people died, she's like, "You don't read the book reads you. That is not how books work. Do you not book, Stella?" I know it's a horror movie and sometimes stupid lines happen, but it's not even her fault. It's just I thought the line was stupid. But with this one, the underlying story of like Sarah Bellows and like trying to solve this mystery, all they needed was a freaking talking dog, and it just could have been Scooby-Doo. It was a little bit Goosebumps-like and a little bit Fear Street-like, and if you know anything about R.L. Stine, you might, get back some fuzzy memories and some bad memories of that. It's more Fear Street, I think, than it was Goosebumps. The characters were very one-dimensional. I wasn't scared by anything with this. I did appreciate paying homage to many of the characters and bringing them to life on screen. So I did really enjoy that. The ending was pretty anticlimactic, and I'll get into that here in a little bit of spoilers, but overall, I can say that the movie was quite a bit of fun, so I'm going to get into spoilers here now. We're about 8.5 minutes in, but should you see this movie, if you're fans of the books, absolutely. Now, am I going to say that this movie's scary? I wasn't scared by it. I didn't jump one bit. So that's just really how I feel. But anyway, I'm going to get into spoilers here, so 3, 2, 1, and go. So, Stella's character, she, her and Chuck and Augie, they play this prank. They end up playing this prank on, these jock kids that are always picking on them. Well, this thing kind of goes south. They throw like some shit, some flaming shit in the car and everything and scare them, but then they start to chase them down. And the cuts were really, really weird here because they're in this neighborhood and then they run through this forest and then boom, they're suddenly at a freaking drive-in. It didn't quite work. It was just a little bit weird. And the overarching story of all this trying to tie all these short stories together, they really would have been better off just maybe trying to do this VHS style where they just told a bunch of short stories. But whatever, I guess they had to make it Hollywood-like and stuff like that. Otherwise, this probably would have been Netflix exclusive. So, these characters the three friends end up meeting the character of Ramon that we saw earlier in the film. He's just traveling through. It turns out he's got a bit of a past and he's got a bit of a dark secret that he's holding. But they get into his car because he's just had to drive in and join and everything. At the drive-in, and now I have that song stuck in my head. Well, they end up becoming friends after he basically tells off this, jock guy, Tommy, to like leave him alone and stuff like that. Of course, Tommy ends up using, you know, a whole bunch of Hispanic, or, you know, a Hispanic slur because 68. It was said in 1968, by the way, which I probably should have mentioned before, but it was what it was. I mean, if you've seen the movie, you can figure that out. But with this, the kids end up finding this book, and of course, Stella being, you know, an aspiring writer and stuff like that, and wanting to write projects, of course, the first thing you do with, you know, a book you find in a haunted house with a woman that apparently murdered children, even though she didn't, we find that out later. Yeah, tell me a story and everything. And then she's checking, wait, this book, I probably shouldn't take this book, but I'm going to take this book. And then suddenly people start dying. We get Harold, like Tommy lives on this farm, and Harold is a scarecrow and stuff like that, and he beats the shit out of Harold and treats him really, really badly. Well, Harold seems a little bit realistic. A little bit later, Tommy becomes Harold, and this really cool scene where, you know, Harold the scarecrow is actually stalking him, and then picks up this pitchfork and stabs him and turns him into a scarecrow. And that's exactly how it was. It was great how they did that. Now, was everything exactly how I remember in the stories? You're gonna twist some things around and everything, but they told the stories pretty well and paid, you know, good reverence to some of these. They didn't focus on too many of them, because it would have been really bad if they just threw about 20 stories out there, because I think each book had 20, 25 plus stories in them. But the story of Harold's pretty cool. And then a bit later on, you get the big toe, where this woman's out walking, you know, walking along or whatever, and sees his toe sticking out of the soil, and clipped and cuts it off and everything, and puts it in the stew. And then there's his corpse that comes after her. Who took my toe? I sound like Lupita Nyong'o, however the heck you say her name, from Us, trying to be, you know, the tethered version. But anyway, I digress on that. The whole big toe thing was pretty cool. The red spot and the spider bite on the cheek, that one was a little cheesy, but it was a pretty iconic one. The best one I like, as far as how they made the character look, was the Dream. The very stretched out, kind of pudgy, but just, you know, just like stretched out and thick, like just lumbering mass or whatever, with this woman that just had this creepy ass smile. That was really good. They captured her really well. That was real, or it, or I mean, I'm not even sure. I think it was a woman, but they captured that character so goddamn well. The problem is too many of the characters relied on them doing too many stupid things. There were these points where, like, oh hey, we need to find out more about Sarah Bellows. Our friends are dying. Let's do this library scene where they do this study scene and everything, and they do that, and they're studying on all this stuff, and oh wait, they are easily able to outsmart the adults, like, easily. And I know security maybe wasn't the best in 1968, but good God, fucking hell. And this was right in the midst of the Vietnam War. So a little bit later, I'm just going to spoil something else here, but Ramon, it turns out he was a draft dodger, and that was his dark secret and everything, and that's something that's haunted him. But with the book, it was just all about time, you know, just playing on the worst fears of these teenagers. And then also others and everything. Basically, Sarah Bellows just wants revenge on everybody, because it turns out she actually didn't poison anybody. She found out that the paper mill that her family built, that was, like, you know, something that was the lifeblood of the town and what put the town on the map, was actually poisoning the water. And Sarah found out about it. But then the family found out that she found out, and then basically tortured her and committed her to a psych ward. And we find that out later. So no wonder Sarah Bellows is pissed. Then there's the character of the sheriff. And look, I mean, I get it. The guy's supposed to be stupid. I mean, the guy thought Nixon was a good president. So, I mean, right there, I think that proved that the character himself was not very intelligent. I don't know about the actor. I got nothing against the actor. But there's this point where they tell the story of Mitai Doti Walker, and the body parts fall through the freaking chimney, you know, or the fireplace and stuff like that. And he tries shooting the head that first comes down. And then the body parts fall down, and the thing pieces itself together. And this guy just stares for the amount of time. I could have made a pizza from scratch and cooked it in the amount of time it took this guy to realize, hey, wait a second, I should be staring at this goddamn creature. Maybe I should try to shoot it. Oh, wait, I'm dead. There was some pretty good violence in this for a PG-13 horror movie, I will say that. The ending was very anticlimactic. It turns out that Stella basically convinces Sarah, I will tell your story, but please, you gotta let this rage go. You can't keep killing my friends. because Augie, he gets pulled, he gets killed by the corpse that had the big toe. And then Chuck ends up getting absorbed by that weird creature, the creature. This is an evil place. You should leave now. And it's a weird, washed out creature from the dream. And there are others that are referenced, a Wendigo, and there's a whole bunch of others that are referenced. So obviously they are planning to do a sequel. I don't know if it depends on how successful it is. If it makes at least twice its budget back, if not 3 times its budget, because it was only 28 million. If it makes about 100 million, sure, they'll probably do another one. And if Del Toro's on board and we got Andre back on, great. That's great because they added something to this. The problem is the movie wasn't very scary and the characters were very one-dimensional. I really didn't feel a great deal of attachment to them. I didn't want any of them to die. I just knew, I was like, okay, well, it's pretty obvious which ones are going to die. And for a PG-13 horror movie, I thought it pulled it off just about as well as it could. Again, the ending was pretty anticlimactic. And it did basically say, okay, well, hey, we're going to reference all, it's like, I'm going to tell your story, Sarah, but you got to let this go, do all this. And then, Stella ends up publishing the story. People believe her, some people don't believe her. But then she can go on and do some things. Now, no doubt they could end up they could end up having a whole fresh new cast for the sequel and this kind of stuff and tell some more stories. But they would have to tell it different than somebody with Sarah Bellows. I mean, who knows what they're going to do. Overall, I'm going to say, but by the way, spoilers are done here. But overall, I'm going to say that the movie's a B. The movie's a B. The movie's a B because I enjoyed what they did with the characters and everything and what they did with the monsters and telling the story and that kind of stuff. I almost want to go C+ just because the characters are so one-dimensional and stuff like that. But I'll say B because I enjoyed it and it gave me some nostalgia and in a good kind of way. It didn't feel so fan servicey and stuff like that. So B. If I forget to put a poll up there, please let me know in the comments what you guys think. But anyway, like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritland. I'll see you guys soon.